Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and close the doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session. Will the members please stand? With the visitors in the gallery please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance. Representative Todd will serve as chaplain of the day. Representative Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I contemplated what I might say to you today was really more of, as I was convicted about this, more speaking to myself and how we should remember in our roles, especially here, how we daily need to stay in the Word. John 1:1 says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made." Matthew 4:4, Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Romans 10:17, consequently, faith comes from hearing the message, and the message is heard through the word about Christ. And Ephesians 6:17 tells us, "Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God." Hebrews 4:12, "For the word of God is alive and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It penetrates even to dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart." Would you bow with me, please? Our Father, we just ask you today to help us to remember and to strive to stay in your word. Father, I pray that this week we could remember to respect and love one another, that the lost may see you through everything we do. We ask your continued blessings of wisdom and discernment on this body, that all we do is pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Representative Todd will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 90 members present.
Let the journal reflect. Representatives Byrd, Carter, Travis, Ogles, and Stewart are excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming and honoring.
Welcome and honoring Speaker Pro Tem Marsh. You're recognized at the well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the Sergeant of Arms escort our guest into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, escort the guests to the well. Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 1046 by Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, a resolution to honor and commend Milo State Community College on the occasion of its 50th anniversary. Whereas it is fitting that we should honor those worthy institutions that provide stellar education to the citizens of Tennessee. And whereas Milo State Community College is one such estimable institution of higher education that is worthy of our respect and commendation. And whereas in September 1969, Motlow State Community College first opened its doors to 551 students with 18 full-time faculty members in Moore County, Tennessee. And whereas it is in its 50th year, Motlow State Community College serves as the primary community college for more than 600,000 residents who comprise its 11 county service area, which encompasses 4,500 square miles. And whereas Motlow State Community College is the top performing institution among all colleges and universities in the Tennessee Board of Regents, and whereas this fine institution has served its community and embraced its mission to enrich and empower its students and the community it serves, and for these noteworthy contributions to this great state, Motlow State Community College should be specially recognized. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the Winona Leverage General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we honor and commend Motlow State Community College on the celebration of 50 years of dedicated service to the state of Tennessee, extending our gratitude for the significant impact this esteemed institution continues to have on the citizens of Tennessee, and wishing the faculty, staff, and students every success in the future.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Clerk. I wanted to share a little information about Motlow State Community College on their 50th anniversary. They're one of the fastest growing colleges in the nation. They have campuses located in Sparta, McMinnville, Smyrna, Fayetteville, and the original campus in Moore County and online. The Moore County campus is near Tullahoma and Lynchburg and was built on 187 acres of land donated by the late Senator Rego Martlow and his family in 1969. They employ 308 full-time and 318 part-time faculty and staff. In the spring of 2020, the total enrollment was 6,124. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Michael Torrance, the president of Motlow State Community College. He has been president of Motlow since May of 2018. He earned his PhD at Tennessee Tech and has almost 15 years of experience in higher ed administration and over 25 years in faculty and teaching experience. Dr. Torrance is also a veteran of the U.S. Air Force. Dr. Torrance, would you like to say a few words to us?
Do I have to wait to be recognized?
You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Sexton. What an honor it is to be in front of the Tennessee General Assembly membership with my colleagues. Wherever I go across the state and across the nation, I take them with me. Motlow State Community College continues to empower, support, and be risk adverse in support of the workforce and student success initiatives of this great state. Thank you so much for your support. We look forward to your continued support. Thank you so much. Go Bucks.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd also like to recommend Senator Shane Reeves come up here and say a few words. He is the senator that helped us put this proclamation in place. Senator Reeves.
Senator Reeves, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Representative Marsh. Honored to stand with my colleagues here in the State House tonight to recognize President Torrance and his fine staff at Motlow. They're doing great things. Glad to have them in my district and proud to carry this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you all very much. And Mr. Speaker, would you come down for a quick photo op?
Chairman Wendell, you're recognized in the well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that Sergeant Arms escort our guests into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, escort the guests to the well, please. Chairman Wendell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the rules be suspended for the immediate consideration of House Joint Resolution 174.
Mr. Clerk, read the caption.
House Joint Resolution 174 by Chairman Wendell and others, a resolution to recognize Brigadier General Curtis J. Winstead of the Tennessee Army National Guard on the occasion of his retirement.
Without objection, the rules are suspended. Chairman Wendell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 174 by Chairman Wendell and others, a resolution to recognize Brigadier General Curtis J. Winstead of the Tennessee Army National Guard on the occasion of his retirement. Whereas we take great pleasure in honoring those members of the United States military who throughout their distinguished careers have served with honor, bravery, and an unswerving commitment to duty. And whereas one such individual is Brigadier General Curtis J. Winstead of the Tennessee Army National Guard, who, having completed an exemplary tenure of proud service to our nation, retired on January 31st, 2021. And whereas during his distinguished career, he served as Command Judge Advocate, 194th Engineer Brigade during Operation Iraqi Freedom 3, 2004 to 2006 in Iraq. And in recognition of his service, he was awarded the Meritorious Service Medal. And whereas Brigadier General Winstead served in numerous positions of increased responsibility, including as Tennessee's Senior Staff Judge Advocate at the Joint Force Headquarters in Nashville, 2009 to 2017, before holding the post of Director of the Joint Staff Army Element, from which position he retired. And whereas throughout his distinguished career, Brigadier General Kurt Winstead served these United States and the state of Tennessee with honor and distinction, and it is wholly fitting that we recognize him on the occasion of his retirement from military service. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we honor and commend Brigadier General Curtis J. Winstead of the Tennessee Army National Guard upon his retirement, as we extend our gratitude for his many years of selfless service and our best wishes for his every future happiness and success.
Chairman Wendell, you're recognized.
Members, if you will, let's go back to 1985. In 1985, in the one floor below us, Lamar Alexander was the governor. In 1985, we had a speaker named Ned Ray McWhirter. And we also had a young person that was being recruited to be in the Tennessee Army National Guard. Also, one fact that's important, David Wales was the chief clerk of the House, and he stood right here at that time. Could be 85, 87, I'm not sure exactly what year it was. But the Tennessee National Guard is a hometown institution, and there's no place you can go in Tennessee if you're a member of the Guard that you're not at home, because somebody you know lives in all 95 counties and every small town across the state. And the way the National Guard replenishes its members is that members of the National Guard will recruit other people to be in the National Guard. And in 1985, 87, whatever it was, the chief clerk of the House, who was in the future, he was on the Court of Appeals, and I think he was McWhirter's chief counsel. He was trying to recruit members from the Tennessee Army National Guard. And there's different jobs in the Army. You can be a clerk, you can be an infantry person, you can be a mortar, I'm not sure what the right gender designation is now, mortar woman, mortar man, or there's all kinds of jobs. But one of them is paralegal, and one of them is a lawyer. It's called a judge advocate. And it so happened that the chief clerk was a judge advocate with the Tennessee Army National Guard. I think he was with 30th Troop Command, because there's commands all over the state, the 194th Engineers, the 278th Armored Cavalry Regiment, the 30th Troop Command. So no matter where you go, there's a different National Guard unit. And the chief clerk, and Speaker, I'll make this short, I'll bring it to a conclusion. But the chief clerk was trying to find some more people to be in the National Guard. and he heard this young lawyer named Winstead. And he went to Winstead and said, we'd really like, we've discussed this, and all the lawyers and all the JAGs and all the people in charge have decided that you would make an excellent judge advocate. And we'd appreciate if you consider going to JAG school, which is at the University of Virginia. And they thought about it for a while. And Winstead listened to what they had to say. And then Beth told them no. She couldn't do it. Nobody's going to get this, Miss Winstead. But anyway, she said, I've got a husband who might be interested. So that's how General Winstead was recruited to the Tennessee Army National Guard. Some of you are going to pick up on this in a minute. When you think about it, in the future, you'll get it. But the reason I tell the story is that General Winstead worked his way through different positions, and eventually he was a staff judge advocate for the 194th Engineering Brigade out of Jackson, Tennessee, and deployed to Iraq with them. Then he was a staff judge advocate for the entire state of Tennessee, and he's got 18 or 19 judge advocates that work for him. And I can assure you from personal observation that this man is a kind, decent, compassionate person. He took care of his soldiers and made sure that they got what they needed and did what they were supposed to do. And we need more people like that. But even more important than that, I've watched him for over 3 decades now. He is such a good father and such a good husband. And he and Beth have done a great job with 2 daughters. And to me, that's their biggest legacy or greatest legacy. So, General, you've done such a good job, not just for those of us that work for you in the National Guard, but also I've watched you through the years. And again, he is a kind, decent, compassionate person and a great dad. And the biggest compliment I can give him, his mother was the band director at Coalfield in the mid-'70s, and his dad taught, he's a football coach at Central in Morgan County at Wartburg. And I think his uncle was at Sunbright or Oakdale, one of the two. But he's got a tight-knit family, and they've always been tight and continue to be. And I don't want to overstate it, but his mother, his wife, he and his children are such good people, and we should recognize that in Tennessee because we need more of that, and we need more examples like that. So I'm going to finish up and turn my time over, but I do want to say to his mother, I've watched your son for 3 decades, over 3 decades now, and you must have been a really good mother because he is such a good reflection on your family. And I'll tell something else about her. She was the 6th grade music teacher for one of our members. And I'll let you guess who that might be. I don't think he can sing very well, but nonetheless. But anyway, General Winstead, I have the utmost respect for you, and I certainly appreciate the sacrifice. I mean, your family gave you up when you went to Iraq for, I guess, a period of 18 months. You were gone from the house, and Beth and the children carried on. But we appreciate the sacrifices you've got to the state of Tennessee, and I certainly appreciate your friendship because you are, again, a decent person. At the end of the day, we're all going to leave this earth, and that's really all that matters. And you've got that covered. And Mom, you did a great job with him. Appreciate it. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to give the rest of my time to Colonel, I think he's right here. Oh, yeah, here he is. Come on.
Representative Whitson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colonel Wendell, that's a tough act to follow. Listen, General, congratulations on a distinguished career. From my association with the National Guard, it's not 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. It is a full-time commitment. They're full-time soldiers and airmen, and they do so much, not just for our state, for our nation. They've been called to duty since 9/11, and their sacrifice has been incredible. But to serve in the military is a team effort. And that team includes a family, a wife and children, and a mom that understands the call on weekends. You miss birthdays, you miss anniversaries, you miss so many special occasions, funerals, weddings, but the call to duty is always there. And I just want us to recognize the one behind the general there and the family that made that happen. Beth, family. And the general said if Colonel Wendell talked for 2 more minutes, he was going to have him do push-ups. So with that, I will finish. And Mr. Speaker, would like to, General, would you like to say a few words?
General, you're recognized.
First of all, I'd just like to say, Mr. Speaker, thank you for having me in here. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for the support. Thanks, family. Appreciate it. This is a great honor for me personally, and I want to say just thanks for everybody. But most importantly, I do want to say this. I want to say thank you to this chamber down the hall, and the governor's office for your just unbelievable support of the National Guard and your support of one of our greatest treasures in Tennessee, and that's our veterans. So please keep it up. You're doing a great job. Thanks.
Representative Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I'm not going to sing, don't worry. But as John Mark already said, you may be wondering what I've got to do with standing up here. But John Mark's story was really great, and he did a good job. But what he didn't mention at the very beginning is that the Winstead family is from Hawkins County, which we are very proud of. And so I would be remiss if I didn't say, on behalf of Hawkins County and Northeast Tennessee, we are absolutely humbled and proud, and we are just tickled to death to see you in retirement, and congratulations. Thank you.
Chairman Wendell, can I have you move to adopt, please?
General, can I move to adopt? Move to adopt.
Very good. Chairman Wendell moves adoption of House Joint Resolution 174, properly seconded. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 174, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Cheryl, aye. Sparks, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
House Joint Resolution 174, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Chairman Wendell, you are recognized.
Once again, thank you for your service to our state and our country. And from a personal perspective, I miss seeing you every month. And every time I drive up Sidco Drive, I look to see if his car there, and it's not going to be there again. It's sort of a sad time when I drive up, but I love you, and I appreciate your service. And again, to you and Beth, great people and great example. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We got a picture?
Thank you. Yes. We're under welcoming and honoring anyone seeking recognition. Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind the body of a horrific event that occurred April 19th, 1995 in Oklahoma City. That was the date of the Oklahoma City bombing. I was actually an intern in Oklahoma City when that occurred. There were at least 168 people who perished in the bombings. Over 600 were injured. Two of the people that perished were two of my classmates, Jill Randolph and Carrie Adams. Carrie was pregnant at the time. So if we can have a moment of silence for those families that were affected and are still affected from that day. Thank you. Amen. Thank you.
Chairman Whitson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, we have a special guest in the gallery tonight, Miss Tennessee, USA, Elizabeth Pistol, and her proud parents, Alfred and Caroline Pistol. They're from Williamson County. And Elizabeth was just crowned back in March, Miss Tennessee, USA, and she has devoted her year of service to help those with disabilities through a program she calls Dancing Divas and Do's, to help children and adults with special needs learn to dance and socialize and bond together. And Elizabeth, we thank you so much. I must say, Elizabeth is finishing her final year at the University of Alabama. That's okay. But we're so proud of you, Elizabeth, and all you've done for so many, and we look forward to hearing many more great things from you. And thank you so much for being here tonight.
Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I do have some special guests in the balcony as well. And today is a double special day. I remember when I was in my 30s, it felt like it was just about 37 days ago. But my legislative analyst, Marissa King, and my intern, Orasi Abel, are both in the balcony, and they are celebrating their birthdays on today. So if you would just applaud with me. Thank you.
Representative Towns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I hate to petition you all on such a somber note, but I've learned that over the years, not only do we live up here and work, we die up here. Our families, our friends, they perish in the process of us doing the business of the people of the state of Tennessee. Unfortunately, I have to announce one of our long-serving senators who began his tenure in the House some time ago actually met his demise this past weekend. None other than Senator Roscoe Dixon, who was a devout community worker. He was a military man, served in the military and the National Guard. He was just community through and through. While he's been gone a little bit, he and his family are hurting now. So this body where he spent a lot of his time, lived and did great work, love to have a moment of silence for him and his family. For Senator Roscoe Dixon. In the mighty name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Any further recognition? Welcome and honoring. Seeing none. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction to resolutions.
Lear Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar or refer to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Joint Resolutions congratulatory and memorializing.
Lear Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing in line with the desk be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Lear Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions lying over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills, Senate bills on first consideration.
Lear Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that Senate bills 252, 486, 1,343, 1,345, 1,377, and 1,621 transmitted by the Senate be held on the desk pending third consideration of their companion House bills.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on second consideration, House bills on second consideration.
Lear Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House bills 1,631 through 1,632 be passed on second consideration and be held on the desk or referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Petitions and memorials, reports from standing committees, reports from select committees, calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration in keeping with Rule 50.
Gentleman moves passage of the consent calendar properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any objections been filed?
Mr. Speaker, item 19, Senate Joint Resolution 422 has been objected to by Leader Camper.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? One moment, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I apologize to the body. Leader Camper has not bumped Senate Joint Resolution 422, item 19. That item will remain on the consent calendar. The objection was item 69, Senate Joint Resolution 472 by Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any further recognition on the consent calendar? Seeing none. We're voting on the consent calendar. All members in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Having received constitutional majority, I declare the consent calendar passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar.
Call up the first bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, item 1, House Joint Resolution 174 was called up out of order and adopted under welcoming and honoring. The House is ready for item 2, House Bill 1015 by Representative Hicks of Hawkins relative to discount plans.
Chairman Hicks, at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to hold House Bill 1015 on the desk.
Held on the desk without objections. Ordered. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 795 by Chairman Howell relative to education. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Howell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1377.
Chairman Howell moves substitute conform to Senate Bill 1377, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1377 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Howell moves passage of Senate Bill 1377 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
House Education and Instruction Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chair Lady Moody, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1, withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Howell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill simply says that if the State Textbook Commission does not recommend adoption of career and technical education textbooks and other instructional materials in any given year, the LEA will have permission to use those unused funds to purchase technology for that LEA. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Howell renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1377 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Vaughn, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Senate Bill 1377, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 928 by Representative Campbell.
Representative Campbell, at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to roll House Bill 928 to next Thursday's calendar, April 29th.
Without objection, rolled to next Thursday's calendar, April 29th. So ordered. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1488 by Representative Towns relative to electronic equipment of the General Assembly.
Representative Towns, at your desk.
We got it. Mr. Speaker, if you don't mind, I'd like to refer this back to calendar and rules as we speak.
Without objection, rolled, or Refer back to calendar and rules. Without objections, ordered. Chairman Zachary's breaking the streak. Chairman Zachary, you're recognized. Oh, call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1233 by Chairman Zachary and others relative to the Tennessee Accommodations for All Children Act.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1233 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Zachary moves passage. Properly seconded. Ms. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're going to move to adopt.
Chairman White moves adoption. Amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
No further amendments, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the bill in front of you is the Accommodations for All Children's Act. It guarantees reasonable accommodations for all children in our public schools while also protecting the well-being of every child. The legislation removes the burden and stress of accommodation from our teachers, administrators, parents, and students. Once this legislation passes, Tennessee will have a very clear path forward for every school across our state. With that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Zachary renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Chairman Dixie, you're recognized.
A few questions for you. If a school finds itself in violation of this bill, who bears the brunt of the lawsuit? Who is the person that is going to be responsible, or how is this going to be enforced? The parent, the school, the principal, teacher? How will this be enforced?
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That would be the LEA.
Chairman Dixie.
What would be the punishment? I guess is what I'm asking.
Chairman Zachary.
This provides a cause of action, and that would be up to the judge to decide that.
Chairman Dixie.
So is this a bathroom bill?
Chairman Zachary.
No.
Chairman Dixie.
Okay, no more questions.
Any further discussion? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor Yip.
Yes, sir.
So what kind of bill is this? What is this doing? Because many times, for the first time, many of us see a bill on this floor. And I'm assuming that the amendment makes the bill.
Chairman Zachary.
Yes, sir. Correct.
Representative Miller.
So what are we doing with this bill?
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the Accommodations for All Children's Act, and it guarantees reasonable accommodations for all children in our public schools while also protecting the well-being of every child.
Representative Miller.
And it's mandatory or permissive?
Chairman Zachary.
This will be the law once it passes.
Representative Miller.
So it's not permissive, it's mandatory.
Chairman Zachary.
This will be the law once it passes.
Representative Miller.
So what are the penalties? If, for an example, a LEA does not follow this law if it passes?
Chairman Zachary.
If an LEA chooses not to follow the law if passed, it provides for a cause of action for those who, it provides a cause of action for those who have experienced the school breaking the law, allowing children to violate the Accommodations Act.
Representative Miller.
So who will they take the cause of actions to?
Chairman Zachary.
The LEA.
Representative Miller.
The board, LEA?
Chairman Zachary.
The local school board, correct.
Representative Miller.
So the LEA can rule in favor of the complainant and or in favor of?
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you could restate your question.
Representative Miller.
Well, the question is, you're saying they can bring a cause of action. So we're talking about a potential complainant, someone that would complain about this particular law.
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It'd be a violation if an LEA violates the state law, it provides for a cause of action.
Representative Miller.
So the LEA at that point becomes the complainant? Or is a suit filed against the LEA? I'm trying to get that understanding.
Chairman Zachary.
There would be a cause of action against the LEA.
Representative Miller.
So would that be in some court?
Chairman Zachary.
As in stated in the bill, yes.
Representative Miller.
So it goes back to the question, is this a bathroom bill?
Chairman Zachary.
No,
Representative Miller.
Why not?
Chairman Zachary.
because this is a bill that impacts all children. It's not just segmenting one child. This is literally a bill that protects and accommodates all children and ensures all children receive proper accommodations. That's why this is different than a so-called bathroom bill. No, I'm sorry.
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you. A bathroom bill would segment and speak to one particular group. This addresses every child in every public school to ensure accommodations for all children.
Representative Miller.
Last question. What is the cost of this legislation? What would it cost the LEAs?
Chairman Zachary.
That would be determined by any suit that would be brought if they violate state law.
Representative Miller.
So we do anticipate lawsuits?
Chairman Zachary.
No.
Representative Miller. We do not anticipate any lawsuits?
Chairman Zachary.
I said no, which means no. But anytime you violate a state law, there is always some sort of consequence. And if any LEA chooses to violate state law, then this provides a clear path for a cause of action if you violate state law.
Representative Miller.
So why is it necessary? Why do we have to have this bill?
Chairman Zachary.
To ensure a clear path forward for Tennessee.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Johnson of Knox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill offers separate but unequal accommodations for transgender students. It's demeaning and it's stigmatizing for some students. You're talking about the safety of students, but we're not talking about the safety of all students. My other concern, which has been addressed a little bit, we're seeing lawsuits across the state in these situations, or across the country, I'm sorry. And the students' families are winning. My concern is, are we setting up our LEAs for lawsuits like we're seeing in other places in the country?
Chairman Zachary.
No.
Representative Johnson.
And you can say that with 100% assurance.
Chairman Zachary.
Yes.
Representative Johnson.
Well, this will be interesting. Thank you.
Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the sponsor yield?
Chairman Zachary. Chairman Zachary. He does. Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks, sponsor. It appears to me what this legislation is doing will allow a system whereby any child in our public schools, for any reason, no longer wants to go to a multi-use bathroom, file a petition with the school administration saying, I want to use a private bathroom. And, you know, we might get to the point where it might be 15, 20, 30 students want to use a private bathroom. They don't want to go to the girls' or the boys' bathroom. And then the local education agency, the LEA, is going to have to make accommodations. And if a hearing officer gets appointed and the hearing officer sides on the side of those that want a private bathroom, if there's not enough private bathrooms in the school's going to have to build a bunch of these bathrooms at their cost. Is that accurate, Mr. Sponsor?
Chairman Zachary.
No, that's incorrect. That's not within the definition of reasonable accommodations. Reasonable accommodations ensures that no additional construction costs can be passed on to the LEA.
Representative Griffey.
Well, then how are they supposed to reasonably accommodate if someone wants to use a private bathroom and there's not enough private bathrooms, or the one they want to use is being used by another student? There's not enough time for classes. How are they going to resolve that issue?
Chairman Zachary.
That'll be up to the individual school, and in most cases, it will be a single-use restroom.
Representative Griffey.
And if there's not enough single-use restrooms, and then it goes to a hearing officer, which is provided in the bill, and a hearing officer decides in favor of the students or those students that want a single-use bathroom, then that decision by the hearing officers are going to impose financial cost upon the LEA, is it not?
Chairman Zachary.
No.
Representative Griffey.
With all due respect, I disagree with you. I don't think this bill is necessary, and I'll be voting against it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the sponsor.
Representative Parkinson.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Speaker and Mr. Sponsor. Just trying to get a little bit more clarity. So, and I'm visual. So tell me what your vision is for this bill to do.
Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Representative. It's a good question. So this bill simply ensures that if you are not willing to use the restroom of your sex at birth, that you are provided a reasonable accommodation. There's no law referencing the protection of those children right now that will not use the bathroom of the opposite sex. They're provided a reasonable accommodation. And Mr. Speaker, one more thing. And the definition of reasonable accommodation is very clear. It's access to a restroom or changing facility that's designated for use by members of the opposite sex while the members of the opposite sex are present or could be present, requesting that the school construct, remodel, or in any way perform physical or structural changes to the school, requesting that a school access a restroom changing facility designated by use of the member of the opposite sex if limiting access result in a violation of state building codes or law.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor.
Representative Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question's been called. Any objections? We got some objections. We're on the board. We're voting on previous question. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 65, 24 nays.
Previous question prevails. We're voting. On House Bill 1233 as amended, vote aye if you're in favor when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 65, 24 nays.
House Bill 1233 having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 78 by Representative Campbell and others relative to state government operations. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Campbell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 746.
Representative Campbell moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 746, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Campbell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 746 on third and final consideration.
Representative Campbell moves passage of Senate Bill 746 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Kiesling, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment number 1 is the same as the Senate amendment. We move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Campbell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is an administration bill for the Department of General Services and makes a variety of housekeeping revisions regarding their department. I renew my motion.
Representative Campbell renews his motion. Any discussion? Representative Clemens, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsor. A few questions. I'm trying to get my head around why we're changing the way we contract for these types of specific services. I think we all believe in energy efficiency, and that's not an issue up for debate and not my concern. My concern is we're talking about 20-year contracts with 3-year bond windows. And I'm trying to piece together the fiscal note on this because it didn't make much sense. So can you explain exactly how these contracts are going to work and why a 20-year contract is in the best interest of the state of Tennessee?
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you. And to my friend from Davidson County, thank you for the question. The state of Tennessee has not been able to utilize these type of contracts in the past. They are specifically for savings and energy savings or where they're used in most city and county governments. So in order to be able to mitigate any risk for the state of Tennessee, we did what has not really been done in the past, and that is require a 3-year revolving bond. And so as long as they're fulfilling their contract obligations and their company is solvent, then we're in good shape. But otherwise, there's a 3-year revolving bond. To require a 20-year bond would be to require something that really doesn't even exist out there on the market. But the 3-year revolving bond is to mitigate risk for the state of Tennessee, and the contracts are to save money. Specifically, the same thing they've done in many other states and in cities and counties to try to create some energy savings and other opportunities there. And that's something we're not doing right now. This would go out through the normal RFP and RFQ process as to which companies would be able to bid for this and would be competitive on the market out there so that we can save some money for the taxpayers of Tennessee.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for outlining that. The bill references that this shouldn't be intended to squeeze out or we should make efforts to ensure small businesses are not disadvantaged in these contracts or in the award of these services. But I don't understand why we're not just doing the normal procurement process for windows of time that are reasonable, which would normally be shorter, where every company has an opportunity to bid on a contract, be paid by the state of Tennessee. We generally, we're fiscally conservative. We do things the right way. We can pay these contracts out and every business has an opportunity to bid on them. It looks like here we're limiting the ability for certain companies with a large amount of equity to enter into these long-term contracts. I don't understand why we're changing the way we do business specifically for companies that provide HVAC services and energy saving solutions that we're all interested in. I just don't understand why we're changing the game for this purpose.
Lear Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, the state of Tennessee does not currently have a process for this, that it's not open to small or large companies. This opens it up to both small and large companies, many of which I had emails in our office, and I'm sure in Leader Gant and Representative Campbell's office as well, asking for this type of structure so that the very thing that you mentioned would happen, so that small and large companies would have an opportunity to bid for these projects. The reason it's stretched out over time is that's where your savings are proven. So if you were to just pay out a specific sum of money in a contract to a business to do this, you may not know in that time period whether or not you've recouped the savings that they had promised. And so it's stretched out over a longer period, and the 3-year revolving bond is there to protect the taxpayers of the state of Tennessee and ensure that they've done what they promised they would do.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understand that, and the revolving bond part makes sense to me. I guess what I'm looking at is a 20-year contract on energy savings and utility savings when technology changes every year, and it's rapidly changing now with regards to energy efficiency and all kinds of other developments. So is the state tying itself to, the likelihood of antiquated practices or a company that's not necessarily staying up to date for 20-year windows just to achieve savings that are maybe piecemeal on an annual basis?
Lear Lamberth.
Thank you. And the remaining portion of the sentence that you're looking at is 20 years or the expected useful life of any items that are the subject of an agreement. So again, you're looking at kind of the maximum out there, but there's a minimum depending upon what the contract and what the services are that are being provided.
Representative Clemens.
Yeah, I understand that, and I appreciate your point on that, but it doesn't say the shorter thereof. It says either or. So, I mean, that's the source of my concern. It seems to me like we're obligating the state to this payment, but it's not reflected in the fiscal note. I don't understand how that debt against the state wouldn't hurt the credit rating necessarily if we're booking it like this. That's the source of my concern. And to the extent you can respond to that, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Lear Lamberth.
Thank you for your comments.
Representative Clemens.
That's my concern. If there's no response to that, I just, if we're going to be fiscally responsible and look at these things in a fiscally responsible manner, incurring this debt against the state and then not showing that somehow. And we talk a lot about, our credit ratings. I'm just not seeing how that's lining up on the books. But anyway, thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Lear Lamberth.
Thank you. And again, I think you may have missed the point of the bill. I know you've said several times you understand this, you understand that. These are contracts that we currently don't enter into for energy savings. We've put a revolving bond on this to protect the state against any risk and mitigate that, but it very clearly will save the state of Tennessee in the long term. These are long-term contracts by definition, open to both small and large businesses. I thank you for your comments. I just think we may disagree on this particular issue and what the outcome will be, but time will tell. I'm confident it will save the state money.
Any further discussion? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor yield.
Representative Campbell.
Just for the record, this is a pro small and minority business initiative.
Representative Campbell.
Representative Miller, I think that's a fair statement. Yes, sir.
Representative Miller.
So you did hear my question. Small and minority and African American business initiative.
Representative Campbell.
Yes, sir.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 746, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please. Cooper, no. Please take the vote.
Aye, 69, 22 nays.
Senate Bill 746, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 670 by Representative Freeman relative to child care.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 670 on third and final consideration.
Representative Freeman moves passage, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment makes the bill. I defer to the sponsor for further explanation. Move to adopt.
Chairman Terry moves adoption. Amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For several years, child care and early education providers and members of the Tennessee Association for Children's Early Education have been unable to get consistently reliable and prompt information from the Department of Human Services about policy changes, grant opportunities, and related issues. This bill requires the department to put a specific staff person to serve as liaison to provide this information and does not require an additional position. There's no fiscal impact. With that, I renew my motion.
Representative Freeman renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 670 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
House Bill 670, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1332 by Representative Harris and others relative to education. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1303.
Representative Harris moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1303, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1303 on third and final consideration.
Representative Harris moves passage of Senate Bill 1303 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're moved to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
No further amendments, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill would ensure that an LEA or public charter school would not prohibit a student who is placed in foster care from participating in a school-sponsored student activity or event based solely on the student's residency, placement, and foster care. With that explanation, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Harris renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1303, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 1303 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1334 by Representative Baum and others relative to human trafficking. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1132.
Representative Baum moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1132, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1132 on third and final consideration.
Representative Baum moves passage of Senate Bill 1132 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Curcio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1 is in the Senate bill. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the years, this Tennessee General Assembly has done a lot to raise awareness of human trafficking and sex trafficking and to take actions to prevent that. Much of our work has been in schools by training teachers and providing information to students. This bill would allow us to work in a little bit different area. It would require the Tennessee Department of Tourism and the 19-member Tennessee Human Traffic Advisory Council to develop an awareness poster regarding human trafficking and sex trafficking to be placed in Tennessee's 16 welcome centers located along our interstates. This is exactly what some students, some high school students in Rutherford County have done at many of our middle schools and high schools. They brought me the idea for this bill. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to renew my motion.
Representative Baum renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? See none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1132, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays, one present, unvoted.
Senate Bill 1132 have received the constitutional majority. I hereby declare it passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1410 by Representative Baum relative to athletics. Mr. Speaker, Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1259.
Representative Baum moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 1259, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1259 on third and final consideration.
Representative Baum moves passage of Senate Bill 1259 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clark.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a bill designed to ensure the safety and health of our Tennessee student athletes in grades K through 12. It uses the Tennessee Department of Health's Safe Stars program. That's a program that was developed by Vanderbilt University and physicians there, nationally recognized as one of the most comprehensive safety programs in the country. It comes with 3 different standards or levels, gold, silver, or bronze. This bill would require our LEAs meet the bronze level or bronze standard. Many of the elements of this standard are already in Tennessee code, but some are new. Of the ones that are new, some of our LEAs are already voluntarily requiring these. Let me give you many of the examples of what this entails. It includes training for coaches in concussions, sudden cardiac arrest, CPR, AEDs, severe allergic reactions, severe weather, such as lightning, heat-related illnesses. And then it also includes a mandate for a meeting with parents that could be online or through video, where parents would receive this information, including information about the benefits of EKG testing. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Baum renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1259, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Zachary, aye. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 1259 having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1342 by Representative Carringer and others relative to education. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Representative Carringer, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 0636.
Representative Carringer moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 636, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Carringer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 0636 on third and final consideration.
Representative Carringer moves passage of Senate Bill 636 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman White, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate Amendment Number 1. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment Number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Carringer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 0636 rewrites the bill to amend current law to clarify that a school or school district is not closed when teachers are required to work remotely and provide virtual instruction to students in current statute on charging a teacher leave. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Carringer renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 636, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member cast a vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
Senate Bill 636, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 237 by Chair Lady Littleton and others relative to children.
Chair Lady Littleton, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 237 on third and final consideration.
Chair Lady Littleton moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment Number 1.
Vice Chairman Jernigan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt Amendment 1.
Vice Chairman Jernigan moves adoption Amendment Number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Amendment Number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chair Lady Littleton, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This legislation would maintain the court's widest discretion to order a custody arrangement that is in the best interest of the child. It requires that the custody order include written findings of fact and conclusions of law when the parents have not agreed on a custody arrangement and a parenting plan. It also evaluates for custody first under the existing kinship foster care program when the other parent loses custody of their child. The amendment further classifies that a parent may not be compensated for foster care as it is in the best interest, as it is practiced under the current foster care program. And it also cleans up a provision in Section 3 of the amendment as requested by Department of Children's Services. With that, I renew my motion.
Chair Lady Littleton renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 237 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts a vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
House Bill 237 having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1231 by Chair Lady Littleton and others relative to juveniles. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chair Lady Littleton, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 447.
Chair Lady Littleton moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 447, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 447 on third and final consideration.
Chair Lady Littleton moves passage of Senate Bill 447 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Vice Chairman Jernigan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate Amendment 1. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment Number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chair Lady Littleton you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This requires the on-site facilities supervisor in charge at a secure juvenile detention or correctional facility to immediately report any security breach and any escape by a juvenile who is alleged or adjudicated to be delinquent for an act which would be a felony if committed by an adult. It adds the Department of Children's Services to those whom the OFSI must report the escape. Establishes that the OFSI who fails to comply with certain reporting requirements may be charged with a Class C felony offense of permitting or facilitating escape if intentionally failed to report. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chair Lady Littleton renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 447, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts their vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Hodges, aye. Bricken, aye. Beck, aye. Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Senate Bill 447 has received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 347 by Speaker Johnson and others relative to confidential information of law enforcement officers. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on desk.
Deputy Speaker Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 475.
Deputy Speaker Johnson moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 475 without objection. So ordered. Deputy Speaker Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 475 on third and final consideration.
Deputy Speaker Johnson moves passage of Senate Bill 475 on third and final consideration. Proper second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Deputy Speaker Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As introduced, this makes confidential certain personal, financial, residential information on federal law enforcement agencies, the same that's offered to our state and local officers and agents. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Deputy Speaker Johnson renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 475, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts their vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Hardaway, aye. Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 475 having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 360 by Chairman Hawk and others relative to coverage for mental health, alcoholism, and drug dependency services. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on desk.
Representative Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to substitute conform to Senate Bill 151.
Representative Hawk moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 151, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move passage of Senate Bill 151 on third and final consideration.
Representative Hawk moves passage of Senate Bill 151 on third and final consideration, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Insurance Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kumar, you are recognized, sir.
I don't have a
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Hawk, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As amended, House Bill 360 seeks to give our Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance a broad perspective on how insurance plans are doing when it comes to covering mental health care. This bill directs TDCI to use existing resources to access federal reports from insurance plans and to make this data available to this General Assembly. With that explanation, I renew my motion.
Representative Hawk renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 151, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts their vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 151 and received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 915 by Chairman Hawk, relative to the practice of aesthetics. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute conform to Senate Bill 1339.
Representative Hawk moves to substitute conform to Senate Bill 1339, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1339 on third and final consideration.
Representative Hawk moves passage of Senate Bill 1339 on third and final consideration, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. I move for its adoption just so we can hear Chairman Hawk say the word esthetician as many times as possible.
Chairman Vaughn moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adoption of amendment number 1 say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendment.
Representative Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Chairman Vaughn, I can certainly say esthetician, but I don't know if I can spell it or not. So I have to say it real slow. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Senate Bill 1339 was filed to clear up a problem that was brought about by a 2017 AG opinion. The opinion states that estheticians or non-medical employees at a med spa could not perform microneedling. The issue at hand is that the AG did not consider that there are two types of microneedling. One is cosmetic by nature and the other is a medical procedure. So what this bill does is to allow the estheticians to perform the cosmetic microneedling under the supervision of a physician. With that explanation, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Hawk renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? All those in favor of Senate Bill 1339 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Senate Bill 1339 and received the constitutional majority. I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1181 by Chairman Rudd, relative to abortion.
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of HB 1181 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Rudd moves passage, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment makes the bill. I defer to the sponsor for further explanation. Move to adopt.
Chairman Terry moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Government Operations Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's filed as House Amendment 2.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment makes clarifications to the rulemaking process as well as allows law enforcement officers to collect fetal remains in the course of a criminal investigation. I defer to the sponsor for further explanation. Move to adopt.
Chairman Reagan moves adoption of amendment number 2, probably seconded. Any discussion on amendment number 2? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 2 say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Rudd renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The sponsor yield. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Mr. Sponsor, the cost associated with either cremation or burial, who is responsible for that cost? Who bears the cost of the cremation, or is that addressed in the bill?
Chairman Rudd.
No, it is not addressed in the bill. We did research extensive on that during the committee process. It is estimated that if there is a charge, many funeral homes will not charge, some do. For a burial is $350, for a cremation is $150, and for an open burial is an additional $150. Many funeral homes do not charge.
People in the gallery, if you cannot remain quiet, you will be removed. This is your first one and only warning. Next warning, you're removed. Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that answer. But if there's a situation where it's not absorbed by that funeral home and that person don't have the funds to be able to do that, is there some penalty that they would come up against them, or how would that be handled?
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
In the event that if a mother walks away or cannot afford, then it will be the responsibility of the clinic. There also are charities out there that are set up to help with burial expenses.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Sponsor, is there ever a point in that process where if the person is not able to pay, that the state would step in and do anything, help underwrite the cost or be of assistance in any capacity?
Chairman Rudd.
Not to my knowledge.
Leader Camper.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sponsor. So that's not addressed in the bill. Okay, thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Lamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the sponsor, is it safe to say you've never been a woman?
Chairman Rudd.
Yes.
Representative Lamar.
Thank you. Is it safe to say that you've never been pregnant or experienced pregnancy?
Chairman Rudd.
Correct.
Representative Lamar.
Thank you. Is it safe to say that you've never been raped, impregnated, and have to experience that trauma?
Representative Lamar, we're debating the bill, not what he is or isn't personally. So if you can stick to questions about the bill, that would be appropriate, please. Representative Lamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, what I want to say, my questions are leading up to talking about the bill.
Well, I suggest that you ask the questions on the bill, not leading up to the bill. Representative Lamar.
I'll just say what I have to say then, and that's the case, if I can't indulge. All I'm gonna say, this is one of the most offensive pieces of legislation I've heard this year. Offensive. For women who have actually had to bury children. This is a terrible piece of legislation. What you are doing is forcibly, potentially women who have been raped, who've been pregnant, and then you're pushing them to bury or cremate that? It's terrible. This is not a pro-life piece of legislation. What you are doing is further using your legislative powers to bring trauma on women who decide to make that choice. Yet we're not doing anything else in the legislature to support other women in their ability to have safe pregnancies. What about the women who've had miscarriages, multiple miscarriages? What about them? Do they have to pay a burial fee every time they lose a child trying to have children? Why are we taking the most traumatic parts of pregnancy and then passing legislative action around them in the name of pro-life? This is ridiculous, and I'm offended if anybody votes for this bill because it has nothing to do with the child. This is about pushing an unnecessary agenda. So if you're going to push a piece of pro-life legislation, push some pro-life legislation, but don't push nothing like this that's going to force you to have to bury children in the weeks that and this is a fetus. This is not even a baby that we're talking about. So be very clear. I don't appreciate this legislation. It's offensive to women like me. And I hope everyone listening doesn't vote for this terrible, offensive piece of legislation.
Chairman Rudd.
This legislation strives to extend the same protections, the same respect and dignity to a deceased surgically aborted child as granted to any other deceased human being. It will be the responsibility of the mother or the abortion clinic or the clinic and that had the abortion to pay for the series. So we're not forcing women to do anything. The real subject here, this legislation does not in any way, shape, or form restrict abortion or have anything to do with abortion. This is post-abortion. And the way that the remains of a unborn aborted child is handled right now, whether it's thrown in the trash or flushed down the toilet, is appalling. And we have in code today that pets, our farm animals and our pets, are treated with more dignity, yet there is nothing in code to protect the dignity of an unborn, of an aborted child. And this legislation simply takes care of that. But again, in no way, shape, or form is this an abortion bill. It does not restrict or in any way restrict a woman's right or access to an abortion.
Representative Lamar.
Thank you. Did you know a piece of legislation like this that was passed in Ohio was struck down in the courts?
Chairman Rudd.
You are incorrect. Currently, 11 states in the Ohio, which this is based on, was upheld by the court. The parts of the abortion bill that did not survive in Ohio are not a part of this. We took what the courts and the Supreme Court and the Eighth Circuit Court all recommended for passage, and that is what is in this bill. Since that legislation has already been upheld by the Supreme Court, we adopted the parts that it was, and that is in this legislation. Many parts of Ohio's legislation that were not struck down were also not addressed by the Supreme Court, and we did not include in this legislation.
Representative Lamar.
And you are pushing a piece of legislation that's going to cost the state money because you're going to be into a legal fight. And he just said the initial drafting of this bill was in fact unconstitutional. So again, if we want to be responsible by the state, why don't we be fiscally responsible and avoid all of these legal fees that we're going to have to go through when we pass this piece of legislation? Again, it's wrong, it's offensive, and it does nothing to support women. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Rudd.
I know that's a typical tactic on the left to try to talk about lawsuits, but again, most of the Ohio law was upheld in Supreme Court in 2019, and this bill is based on that parts that were upheld and recently on the Eighth Circuit sword as well. The Supreme Court ruled in Roe versus Casey. They said that the state, there is not an unnecessary burden because choice is maintained. It does not interfere with or burden a woman's abortion choice. The Eighth Circuit Court also rejected Planned Parenthood's arguments that the increased cost from disposing of fetuses and the alleged associate psychological trauma does not warrant does not prohibit the abortion decision. And there are 11 states that currently have similar legislation.
Chairman Dixie.
I have a question. One of my best friends, when his father passed, and we talked about this in committee, but I just wanted to make sure that we got out here on the floor. When his father passed, they were able to donate his body to science. They donated to actually Meharry University, Meharry Medical College. And under this piece of legislation, if a family wanted to donate the aborted fetus, could they do that?
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Not in an abortion clinic, but when a baby, due to health reasons or a miscarriage or because the baby dies in the womb in a hospital, it can be there.
Chairman Dixie.
So for clarification, if they have the abortion in a clinic, they have to have it cremated or buried, but they can't donate it to science.
Chairman Rudd.
That is correct. It is not in the bill unless there's already legislation I'm unaware of at the federal level.
Chairman Dixie.
Again, I think this is a family decision, and I think that this bill takes that right away from that family to dispose of. If we're going to force them to dispose of, we should give them any options that they want to and not limit them to what we want them to have. So for that, I will be voting against this bill. But thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Rudd.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I was going to renew my motion, but there's more questions. Excuse me.
We're still going. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsor. I'm very honored to join you along with my other colleagues in support of this bill. Many of us have experienced professional careers in healthcare. And as a former heart transplant nurse, I can tell you the difference between medical waste and a preborn child. It's very much different. On many occasions, I had the very unfortunate duty of taking individuals, adults, to the morgue who didn't receive their heart transplant or their other care. In that same morgue would be aborted babies. It's not fetal tissue, it's dismembered children. And so I'm honored that here in the state of Tennessee, upon passage of this legislation, that while these children are currently, as you noted, being ground up, flushed down the toilet, thrown in the garbage, we're going to treat them as they are, the created human that is preborn. So thank you, Mr. Rudd. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Rudd, anything? No, sir. Representative Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the sponsor, yeah.
Chairman Rudd.
I heard you mention something about the Constitution, but I didn't quite get all of that. Could you tell me, did you already say, how many states have passed laws relative to this bill?
Chairman Rudd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 11, Ms. Cooper. Just one moment, and if you want, I will. The states that have passed on the resolution are Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Indiana, Louisiana, Minnesota, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, and Texas.
Representative Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There were comments that were made about fetuses being flushed down the toilet. And do you know of anyone who has flushed fetus down the toilet?
Chairman Rudd.
Well, fortunately, I have never been in or worked in an abortion clinic. However, in subcommittee in health, as well as a health full, we had former abortion workers and former employees and volunteers with Planned Parenthood and other abortion clinic workers who did come in and testify live. It's on video. They described, they have since left, and they have dedicated their lives to informing people of what they witnessed and had to participate in. I think one of the most horrific things they testified in is when a baby is sucked out, regardless of what term it is, it's torn to pieces. And they have to, one of the jobs of the women they described in the clinic was they had to take all the body parts in another room and assemble the head, the torso, the legs, and the arms to make sure nothing's left in the woman that could infect her. And it was her job to do that. And it was very traumatic for her. And that's why she left that profession, is now working against it to inform the public.
Representative Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do you have a report for the state of Tennessee on how a report on all of the fetuses that have been flushed down the commode?
Chairman Rudd.
I cannot address each clinic. There are two current you can call and get. Since this is not in code now, they don't have to report all these. They don't have to describe what's going on. But again, we have in code how to treat dead animals and pets, but we do not have in code how to report and take care of these aborted unborn children, these aborted children.
Representative Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Then could I put a friendly amendment on that bill and say that when this is done and you know about it, when it's reported through the hospitals or the doctors or wherever you get this information, that we get a report on all of those fetuses that have been flushed down the commode? That's a friendly amendment to it, and I don't know whether they can do it right here on the floor, or could you roll it to the next calendar?
Chairman Rudd.
No, ma'am, I would not. This is a good bill in good form, and now there will be reports. This bill sets up that the Departments of Health and the Department of Commerce will be writing the rules and the forms that will be used, and also there will be annual reports during their audits. but we can't go back and revisit history. We don't know what happened in every of the 2 clinics in Tennessee that are open at least 2 days a week. We can only report and audit going forward. Thank you.
Representative Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Then I would suggest that we look at these kinds of bills and at least respect the women in this General Assembly. And since 11 states have passed this kind of legislation, it's also really embarrassing to sit up and talk about, especially people who don't have the experience and know what's going on with a woman's body. And I would just suggest that we need to talk a little more about what we need to do when these kinds of bills come up, when we're talking about people's health. It's important and it's personal to me. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Sponsor.
Representative Johnson and Knox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does this bill allow for the preservation of evidence in cases of rape?
Chairman Rudd.
The DA's Association went ahead and codified to put in here, which is already in code for the most part, but it is in here, yes, that this preserves the right for law enforcement with a judicial approval and a warrant that they can preserve the baby or tissue for testing in the case of a criminal investigation.
Representative Johnson.
Okay, thank you. What about, you stated about what the clinics, you had folks testify about the clinics. Well, I've talked to most of the clinics in Tennessee. They don't deal, they use medical companies to handle those embryonic cells and fetal remains. And those many of those medical companies actually do cremate. So I'm not so sure that you are giving accurate information about what the clinics here in Tennessee do in that case. And one of the other things, you talk a lot about the dignity of the fetus, and that's important. But you know, what about the dignity of the women? That law after law, they are subjected to these things, and their dignity, their choice, all of that is being taken away. And as folks try to chip away and control their bodies. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to vote against this bill.
Chairman Rudd.
Again, we're not denying anyone's choice. These are abandoned children that have been aborted through a surgical abortion and left in the clinics for disposal. And we're not denying anyone the right to an abortion or abortion choice. And I think it's time that we talk about the dignity of this unborn child, that it deserves at least the right, since it will never see a day and have a right to live, it at least has a right to be buried with some respect.
Leader Lambert.
Move previous question.
Previous question, call the objection. I see objection. We are on the board. We're voting on previous question. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? All yes. This is previous question. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 70, 23 days.
Previous question prevails. We're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 1181 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Carringer, aye. Cheryl, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 69, 22 days.
House Bill 1181 and received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1511 by Chairman Haston, relative to the hotel occupancy tax in Henderson County. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1621.
Representative Haston moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1621 without objection. So ordered. Representative Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1621 on third and final consideration.
Representative Haston moves passage of Senate Bill 1621 on third and final consideration. Properly second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this bill is a private act brought to me from the Henderson County Mayor and Commissioners, changing the hotel motel tax rate from 5% to 7%. Proceeds will go to the County Fire Department, Industrial Development, Henderson County Jail, and Tourism Promotion. With that, I renew my motion.
Representative Haston renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1621, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 75, non-nays, 5 present, all voting.
Senate Bill 1621 and received the constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 505 by Chairman Moon, relative to municipal finances.
Chairman Moon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 505 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Moon moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt.
Chairman Crawford moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Moon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, as amended, adds a new subsection that provides a different time frame for the collateralization of public deposits made between May 1, 2021 and December 31st, 2022. Current law is 2 business days, and the new section would provide for 10 calendar days. And this new subsection would repeal on January 1st, 2023. Mr. Speaker, pending any questions, I renew my motion.
Chairman Moon renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 505 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays.
House Bill 505, having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 918 by Chairman Carr and others, relative to taxes. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Carr, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 852.
Chairman Carr moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 852, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Carr, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 852 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Carr moves passage of Senate Bill 852 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Ms. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as in Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Carr, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill deals with a legislation that we passed in 2020 about the short-term rentals that became effective on January of 2021. And what the Department of Revenue decided was after those were starting collected, all the taxes collected by these property management companies must be sent first back to the state, and the state would take their little share out of it and then sent back to the locals. Well, we had been doing it for 30 years, collecting those hotel motel taxes and send them directly to the local county and cities that way. And so with this language, and it is agreeable with the Commissioner of Revenue, that this would take that taxes when they're collected, they will be going straight back to the locals now, and they'll not have to come back to the state. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Carr renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 852, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts a vote, does any member wish to change your vote? Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 85, nays 3 present, unvoted.
Senate Bill 852 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 532 by Leader Gant.
Leader Gant, at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to hold on the desk House Bill 532, please.
Without objection, hold on the desk. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the regular calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a message calendar.
Call up first message.
House Bill 566 by Chairman Reagan, relative to administrative procedure. Mr. Speaker, on April 14, 2021, the Senate substituted House Bill 566 for Senate Bill 1087, adopted Amendment 1, passed House Bill 566 as amended.
Chairman Reagan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur in Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Reagan moves to concur in Senate Amendment Number 1, properly seconded. Discussion on the amendment. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker Sexton. Would the sponsor tell us how the bill reads now, please?
Chairman Reagan.
It reads exactly as it did before.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Perhaps you can tell me how I should vote on it then.
I think you should vote for it.
If you can just give us a brief description of what the bill does.
Chairman Reagan. Chairman Reagan, can you just say what the Senate changed that you concurred with, please? What was the minor change?
I'm sorry, I have my notes on the desk. I didn't bring them. Would you like me to go ahead?
Chairman Reagan, at your leisure, sir.
Thank you. I think after the discussions,
We got it. You two have it worked out?
Yes.
Very good. Any further discussion? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment Number 1, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Cooper, no. Howell, yes. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 69, 23 nays.
Senate Amendment Number 1, having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurring without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the message calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. Let's go with Representative Hicks of Washington first.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw House Bill 1224 from committee in the House.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to hold SJR 472 on the clerk's desk.
Without objection, so ordered. Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the rules be suspended for immediate introduction and consideration of House Resolution 44.
Mr. Clerk, read the caption.
House Resolution 44 by Leader Love and others, a resolution to honor and congratulate Eddie George on becoming the new head football coach at Tennessee State University.
You've heard the caption. Any objection? Without objection, the rules are suspended. Representative Love.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I would like to move that all voting in affirmative be listed as co-prime sponsors.
Move adoption two.
Move adoption
Thank
two.
you. Without objection, exclusion is duly noted. Representative Love moves adoption of House Resolution 44. Probably second. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of House Resolution 44, vote aye. Say aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. I declare it adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. On the next two motions, pay close attention to the bill numbers. Listen for one of your own. These are some housekeeping issues for committee this week. Mr. Speaker, I move that House Bill 913 be heard in full Finance Committee this week.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bill 865, 55, 1010, 1437, 575, 679, 57, 1365, 516, 599, 534, 854, 341, 530, 540, 729, 1,230, 881, 442, 150, and 1,204 be heard in the Finance Subcommittee this week.
And members, the clerk will send you an email if those are one of your bills, but please make sure you look as well. You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, we have several messages from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House Bill 766, substitute Senate bill on the same subject amended and passed by the Senate.
Wednesday's message calendar. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House Bill 830, substitute for the Senate bill on the same subject amended and passed by the Senate.
Wednesday's message calendar. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House Bill 570, substituted for the Senate bill on the same subject amended and passed by the Senate.
Wednesday's message calendar. Mr. Clerk.
Finally, Mr. Speaker, we have a message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House Bill 462, substitute for the Senate bill on the same subject amended and passed by the Senate.
Thursday's message calendar. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. Chairman Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Finance Committee will have an expansion request hearing tomorrow from the Department of Education. That'll be at 3 o'clock. Please note, we will take up bills after the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Remember, if anyone has a bill requesting a TASER study, please put it on notice as soon as possible, and a TASER study calendar date will be forthcoming. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a reminder, House Criminal Subcommittee is going to meet tomorrow in House Hearing Room 3 at 10:30. We'll be there for an hour and a half. If we don't finish, we will come back on Wednesday, House Hearing Room 3 at 2 p.m. So look forward to seeing you all there to finish this calendar up. Thank you.
Representative Towns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the information for Senator Dixon, I wanted to ensure that people know exactly what is going on. This Friday from 4 o'clock until 7 p.m. at Serenity Funeral Home, that's 1638 Sycamore View Road in Memphis, Tennessee, will be the wake. And that Saturday, the funeral is going to start at noon at the same location, Serenity Funeral Home, 1638 Sycamore View. Coupled with this Friday with the wake, there will be a celebration of his life. Those members that served with him, we want to make sure that you're there. You have an opportunity to say something about your encounter with the senator. tell a funny story, tell a deep story, tell a spiritual story, but we'd love to have you on program. The congressman is putting together a celebration of the senator's life. That's after the wake this Friday for those that are in Memphis, Tennessee. Mr. Speaker, thank you for your indulgence, and members. Thanks.
Representative Curcio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You heard a moment ago from Chairman Doggett about the Criminal Justice Subcommittee meeting tomorrow and then again on Wednesday. So if you have a bill that is up on criminal full, we will be meeting Wednesday immediately following criminal sub. So if for some reason it runs over the time period, we will just begin immediately following in House Hearing Room 3. Thank you.
Representative Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a reminder, the House Health Committee will begin hearing our last calendar tomorrow in House Hearing Room 1 at 10:30 with the remainder of the calendar on Wednesday at the normal time. Thank you.
Any further announcements? Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call.
Roll call. Ms. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 91 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 9 a.m. on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021.
Without objection, the House stands in recess until 9 a.m. on Wednesday, April 21st, 2021.